Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we have a submission from the Charlotte Dobre YouTube subreddit about someone who had to kick her mother-in-law out of her wedding. Did she deserve it? Let's find out. Mother-in-law falsely accuses father-in-law on our wedding day, then was removed from the venue after insulting me for my health issues. Interesting. Ooh, I kicked you, sorry. I got some Uggs on. They're really fat. They're big booties. For context. Love context. My mother-in-law left her sons, then got divorced from my father-in-law when my husband and his brother were very young, and they lived almost full-time with their dad. Their mom bounced around all over the place and was in and out of their lives until they were teenagers and she met her now husband, which is when she finally stopped being verbally and physically her. Can't say that on YouTube, but it's... They didn't particularly enjoy their time with their mom. She often talks crap about their dad and makes up stories to try and gain sympathy. My husband, 28, and I have only seen her about 20 times or so in the last 7 years we've been together. She's hard to be around for a list of reasons boiling down to she's very negative and she's great at twisting stories, especially stories from the past. I know this post is long and I'm sorry for that. Oh, don't apologize, Bessie. I love a long post.
Never apologize, mister.
I love a long story. I cut a lot of details and tried to summarize as much as possible. But if you've ever had a mother-in-law like mine, or just really enjoy toxic mother-in-law stories, you might enjoy this read too. I think I will. Before our wedding, I was getting ready in the bridal suite with my bridesmaids and the other family members when my mother-in-law waltzed in. She said she wanted to hang out with me before the ceremony, so I sat down and talked to her for a minute. When mother-in-law was done going on about how excited she was for her big day too, she praised her boys for becoming the men they are today and said that she raised them right and was happy they turned out so well despite their dads towards her and them. I was so dumbfounded, I just meekly said, "Excuse me." She said, "Oh, you didn't know that?" Like a teenage mean girl gloating to her ex-best friend that the boy she likes is going to prom with her instead. I don't like where this is going. To clarify, my father-in-law never hurt anyone, let alone his ex-wife and sons. Ooh, that's a difficult game to be playing. That is not a game we want to play. It's funny how she's projecting. When mother-in-law said the harush toward her and the boys was the reason she left, that she didn't want her boys to be around that, I had enough. Her lies were getting so big she wasn't even able to follow logic anymore to make it make sense. I stopped her and said I was sorry for what she went through, but asked if we could talk about it later because I only wanted to talk about happy things that day, period, as you should. She says she understood that, but she felt like she needed to warn me before I officially started calling them family, and that I should be careful about what I believe because
my boys make up lies about me and were brainwashed by their dad.
Interesting that she chose your wedding day to like come and warn you about these things. Like, what does she want you to do? Just like leave? I told mother-in-law I'm sorry, but I wasn't comfortable with the conversation and tried to end things there. But mother-in-law wouldn't let me go. She talked about how she used to be close with my husband's ex and she wanted us to be like that. My sister couldn't hear any more of this, so she walked over and told me we needed to finish getting ready and suggested that mother-in-law go visit her son in the groom's quarters. Mother-in-law insisted she would rather stay. Ooh, she kind of sounds like a dark cloud just ready to on your parade. The expression is rain on your parade, but I like the image of poo-poo more. I told her I really appreciated spending time with her before the wedding, but I wanted to spend some time alone with just my family and my bridesmaids to finish getting ready, and I'm sure my husband would like to see her too. Mother-in-law looked at me like I had just spit in her face and offended her entire ancestral line. I unknowingly opened her floodgates of fury. She accused me of poisoning her son against her. Oh, that took a turn. I thought we were like
besties.
I thought you guys were like
BFF
in the bridal suite. That I'm the reason he never visits or calls. I wouldn't go that far. I said that's not how my husband and I see it, and we could all talk about that later, but I would really appreciate it if she left the bridal suite for now. Mother-in-law went on about how messed up it is that I'm stopping a son from seeing his mother, and I'm an insult to women for treating her this way, especially since she was a victim. It doesn't really, there's a time and a place to be talking about stuff like this, even if she was a victim. Someone else's wedding day is not that day. Read the room. Okay? What have I said before on this channel? Do not bring problems to the bride on her wedding day. Ever. My sister called her horrible for saying such terrible and inappropriate things and said no one believes her lies. The room went dead silent, period. Oh, so that shut her up. Mother-in-law accused me of talking crap about her to my family, but I was done holding my tongue. I told mother-in-law it's not that I don't believe her, it's that I didn't want to be standing in our wedding venue in my wedding dress speaking ill of my father-in-law. I wanted this to be a happy day, but I was starting to get upset, and I wanted her to leave the bridal suite for now. Fair boundary. It's interesting how you express a boundary to certain people and they just do not respect that. She was still accusing me of alienating her son against her when my husband and brother-in-law walked through the door with a bridesmaid who had left to get them. The cavalry is here! I was so relieved to see my husband. I didn't even care about the fact that our first look picture was now ruined. He asked what was going on, so mother-in-law turned on the crocodile tears and said she didn't know how things escalated so much. Classic playing the victim.
You're not a victim. Not at all.
She was only trying to have an honest talk with me, and the next thing she knew, I was trying to kick her out of the wedding. I wouldn't say that that's an honest talk. I would say that's more of a talking about her family and trying to convince you not to marry into it. I would say that's what she was doing. She said, "I'm so sorry, honey, but I just feel like I'm always being excluded from things and I just couldn't take that from her, not today." I think she respectfully told you before you got irate that she didn't want that kind of energy around her. And I think that is a fair boundary to express. I reassured him I was not trying to kick her out of the wedding. I only asked her if she would leave the bridal suite while I was getting ready because I was feeling uncomfortable with the topic she was discussing, and she wasn't dropping it like I asked. I mean, yeah, you kind of only told her to leave after you said that, please don't talk about this, it's my wedding day, I'd rather only talk about, happy things today. I want to feel, happy. I was in near tears, oh, bestie, from the situation and my anxiety. So my husband asked what exactly made me so upset. I told him I didn't want to talk about it right now. My husband asked his mom to apologize to me for now. She said she would after I apologized to her first. For what? I told her I was sorry she was hurting, but that's all I was going to apologize for now. She briefly reverted back to her toddler days, waving her arms around in a temper tantrum.
Do you see how rude and disrespectful she is to me? Your dad and her turned you both against me.
My brother-in-law cut her off, asking what their dad has to do with this. My sister said that he didn't want to know, and she didn't even want to repeat the things she said about him. My husband asked if that's what upset me, and mother-in-law insisted she felt she had to warn me about him before we had any kids. It's gonna be a no from me, dog. My husband said that was ridiculous because no one's talked to her about having kids yet. She said she knew my health issues would make it hard for me to get pregnant. Absolutely not! What is your problem? And maybe that's a sign I wasn't meant to become a mom because I would be a horrible mom after the way I treated her. You're done. And if it turns out I'm barren, she hopes my husband will take a step back to look at all the other red flags he ignored. Oh dear. What a high stress situation. This is literally the exact opposite about what this The bridal suite is a very symbolic thing, you're surrounded by the women in your life. They're uplifting you. You're all getting ready for this, honestly, one of the most important days of your life. It's supposed to be this very uplifting, nurturing experience. It's not supposed to be an excuse to talk about people and bring this negative energy. It's an absolutely not from me. My husband said the only red flags he ignored were hers, and that stops today. He chewed her out for insulting me and trying to use my health issues against me. He called her out for her negative comments and selfish and manipulative behavior and said that's why they don't make more of an effort. Yeah. This is the thing about being a negative person. There's a lot of people who thrive on negativity. Misery loves company, that kind of. Sometimes people just genuinely don't want to be around that. It's so draining to have a friend or someone in your life that is so unbelievably negative all the time. And they just can't see that maybe in their mind, they're trying to connect with you or whatever. But at the same time, not everybody wants to be around that all the time. They want to be around people that uplift them. It was all I could do to try to hide my smile when he told her he wasn't going to let her try to rewrite history anymore. She was like a deer caught in headlights, but her surprised Pikachu face quickly dropped when my husband told her if our wedding day wasn't important enough for her to keep her comments to herself for once, then he didn't want her at that wedding anymore. The magma The liquid hot magma that was building inside my mother-in-law's volcano finally erupted. She yelled,
"No, we couldn't do this to her, that she deserves to be here."
Like, these people are all trying to tell you, Miss Mother-in-Law, to change your behavior or to at least just kind of like reserve that kind of talk for a day that's not a wedding day. And you're not listening.
Stamp a double stamp. You can't triple stamp a double stamp, Lord.
How frustrating. She cried about how unfair this was and she didn't want to miss our big day, that it'll be one more thing she's excluded from and she just can't take it. Okay, well, if you don't want to be excluded from things, maybe you need to listen to other people when they're telling you they don't like your behavior. She tried saying again she has nothing but good intentions and she couldn't believe this was happening. But my brother-in-law wasn't having any of it. He said it was clear that she wanted to make a big scene, show us how upset she was, so she would stop everything and dote on her. Yeah, she's trying to make it about her, honestly. Like, she's trying to make this day about her. Even the comment about being like,
her big day
and stuff like that. This is not her wedding. This is not about her and her problems and how everybody hurts her and how she's the victim. Like, this is supposed to be a happy day. All she did was remind us why we don't pick up the phone and make more of an effort. My husband and brother-in-law never stand up to their mom because she lives far enough away and we only see her a few times a year. The thing is also, like, sometimes when you stand up to people like this, they literally just like don't hear you. Like,
Not listening. I'm not listening.
They play the victim and then you feel bad and then, you know, like, you realize that you can't express boundaries with certain people, which is why you kind of cut off contact, because it's like you're trying to communicate and the communication is only one-sided and everybody plays the victim and doesn't take responsibility. It's just easier to not. She lives far enough away and we only see her a few times a year. They never really set any boundaries with her. They find it easier to deal with her toxic behavior in the moment and just move on. So witnessing all of this was like a beautiful Haley's comment for me. I know this is like super negative and maybe she's like, you know, in some ways kind of ruined this moment for you, but I also feel like this kind of had to happen. When mother-in-law said she wasn't leaving until they worked it out, my sister opened the door connecting the venue to the bridal suite and stepped away to make room for 2 security guards. Whoop! To show up. I smiled and winked at my sister, who gave me a thumbs up. Mother-in-law was still crying and begging my husband to let her stay, but he said the damage had been done. She turned to the security guards and said they couldn't kick her out because she's the mother of the groom. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. My husband corrected her and asked her to leave. Security asked her to go with them and she gave us all dirty looks, then started hyperventilating her protests. My husband asked her to please leave again and told her that he'd give her a call after some time. She gave my husband one last dirty look and said he'd regret this before finally walking out with security. Ooh. Something tells me there's a part 2, my friends. Update. I know this was long. If you're still here, thank you for reading it through. My husband and I are going to take some time before he reaches out to her. I'm really on the fence if I even want a relationship with her after all that. Would you leave the door open for her or try to work it out? Or would you steer clear of her altogether? I actually feel like it's quite common for people to not only gaslight but play the victim when they feel attacked. Doesn't always mean that they're like a narcissist. It's more of just like a feeling of like, you know, when you like tell a little kid that they've done something wrong and they're just kind of like, and they start crying. It's kind of like that. I think that this was a very heightened situation. It might be worth talking to her once everything has calmed down and you could give her like a chance to apologize, but I wouldn't hold your breath. I wouldn't hold your breath. Lots of people are saying steer clear. She's a nutcase. And lots of people are saying cut off all forms of communication with that awful human being and stay far away from her. I mean, yeah, I think that it's easier said than done to do that with regards to like a mother-in-law, future grandmother or whatever. If things calm down and she still doesn't take any responsibility for her actions, then you cut her off. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but like maybe give her like one more chance to explain herself. And then if, you know, you really can't reach a resolution, I have a feeling that you won't, but let's look at the update. Holy cow, that was my first ever Reddit post and I did not expect it to kind of blow up. I wish I would have gone ahead and included a couple more details for extra context that I deleted in an attempt to keep this from being too long. My favorite part of what happened wasn't even my husband standing up for me. I did like that. But when the mother-in-law said to my husband that she had to warn me about his dad, he backfired with, "Oh, I know you're not accusing dad of what it sounds like you're accusing him, especially since you're the only one who ever laid a hand on us." He's never called her out or used that tone with her before when I was present, and it was absolutely beautiful. But anyway, here's the small update since some have been asking. After my mother-in-law finally left, my husband apologized profusely for her behavior and said he honestly didn't think she would ever do something like this. I told him it wasn't his fault and I was proud of him for standing up to her and for me. See, it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. It's gallant, you know? He came to your rescue. Ooh! Fortunately, the rest of the night went perfectly. Oh, I'm happy to hear that. The only other issue we had was mother-in-law's husband, 2 family members chastising us, then leaving when they heard his mother was removed and why. His mother's sister, however, laughed and said she knew she deserved it. She only wished she could have been there to witness it with popcorn to enjoy. We recently got back from our honeymoon, and so we revisited the issue of his mother after giving it some time. My husband asked if I was comfortable even being in the same room as her now. I told him I thought about it a lot, mostly about how uncomfortable I've always felt around her. It doesn't bother my husband or brother-in-law when she's being insulting or when she attempts to emotionally manipulate them because they say they're used to it and they basically ignore it. Oh, that's sad. I don't know if that's the best way to deal with it, honestly. Even sometimes it's nice to like even say it as a joke, you know, with someone that's kind of being a bully, just like, can you like not bully me for just like 1 second? It's been hard for me to sit there and it makes me feel uncomfortable that I'm going along with what I know are lies. So now that he's finally talked about it and opened her eyes to the elephant in the room, I would probably feel more comfortable around her now if she were to actually show remorse for her behavior and respects our boundaries from here on out. And to those who are worried if we have kids, I hope I can put your mind at ease when I tell you my husband already made it clear he will never feel comfortable having her around our kids, unless we are also present. But who knows at that point if we'll be comfortable letting her around them at all. I've talked to my husband more than a few times about why I think he should start standing up to his mom, but I never pushed the issue after he told me the reason he doesn't is because she did something traumatic when he last stood up to her when he was a teenager. See? With people like this, like it's very, very hard to like express boundaries because especially like moms that are kind of like they have narcissistic tendencies, you can't tell them no.
Because they're your mom and you need to like respect your elders and like you wouldn't exist if it weren't for them.
And all these things is like,
oh, I did so much for you, whatever.
They hold it over your head, right? That doesn't mean that they're never wrong. And it doesn't mean that like you as an adult can't tell them when they're hurting you. Like that concept of, oh, mothers and fathers are never wrong really needs to like go away. I've only ever expressed my worry that the lack of boundaries would cause issues down the line. And my husband acknowledged these past conversations and apologized to me. He said he wishes he made his boundaries clear with her, so maybe she wouldn't feel like she could get away with doing something like that during our wedding. It seems like you have expressed boundaries, and with certain people, they don't respect them. That's the thing. Like, it doesn't matter how many boundaries you express to someone, they don't listen. Listen. That's why the no contact thing or the low contact thing is so important. We decided on him calling her to see about going over to her house to talk to her. He's gonna tell her that he will not tolerate any more negativity and manipulation attempts if she's gonna be in his life. And if she can't handle the boundaries, then she's not capable of having a relationship with him or us. He's going over there this week and I'm genuinely hoping it goes well. I think I will talk to her depending on how my husband's conversation with her will go. That's all for now. Let me know if you would like another update after he talks to her. Absolutely I do! Absolutely I do! I need all the updates! And thankfully we do have a third. Something tells me, prediction, she's not gonna listen. She's gonna play the victim. She's gonna manipulate. She's gonna gaslight. I have hope. I genuinely do hope that she's able to hear him out. And I hope I'm wrong, but let's see. She cost us our security deposit and was planning on sabotaging the wedding. Ooh, okay, what is the tea here? Do I need my teacup? Oh, this is long. It's long and juicy. I just want to take a second to thank you all for your support and advice you've given me, us. I posted this story with my husband and brother-in-law's permission, and they were very receptive, taking a lot of your comments to heart. See, I love that. Even if I don't get to every story, which it's very hard to get to every story, I really like that you guys are supporting each other and giving each other advice. That means a lot to me. We're such a good community. They agree that their mother will never change, but they wanted to talk to her to lay everything out. The three of us sat down to talk about what we wanted to say. We thought they were prepared for a conversation with her until I got a phone call from the coordinator for the wedding venue. I know this is a long update, but personally, I think this is the best one yet, and I know you will like how it ends. Subtle foreshadow. The venue coordinator awkwardly told me she regretted to inform me they would be unable to return our security deposit after we violated the damage clause of our contract. Absolutely not. I was obviously confused and asked why. Apparently, their cleanup crew noticed a Mary Jane smell. What's that? From the groom's quarters and and found a whoopity whoop in the trash. Any smoking or substance use was strictly prohibited and was stated in the contract to be a violation. I immediately knew what happened before I even spoke to husband. I apologized to the coordinator and explained it was my mother-in-law who was removed from the venue. She said she was sorry to hear about the damper on our special day. Little did we know it was no damper, it was our savior. One of the details I edited out of my original post was when mother-in-law were in the bridal suite, before things started to go sideways, she offered to share her vape pen with me. She told me she brought it for fun and I should let loose, but I told her she couldn't smoke here.
It's not a big deal. It's legal here, right?
Mother-in-law protested. Oh, are we Canadian? It doesn't matter. The venue doesn't allow it and we signed a contract, I reaffirmed. All right, I'll just do it outside later. I'm sorry, but you can't. You can't smoke anything anywhere on the venue, inside or outside. I really was dealing with a toddler. I told husband about the phone call and he explained. She offered the to everyone in the groom's quarters, but they told her we couldn't smoke there. But when they all left to help finish setting up, instead of volunteering to help, mother-in-law and her husband stayed behind to husband and brother-in-law chastised them when they came back and found them and made them throw it out. Husband apologized for not telling me, and he said he didn't want to add any more negativity for me from our day, and he hoped they got the smell out so no one would find out. Ooh, I kicked you, sorry. Got some Uggs on. They're really fat. One person suggested husband and brother-in-law should record the conversation with their mother, and while that was a great suggestion, none of us really felt comfortable doing that. So instead, husband called me and put me on speaker in his pocket so I could listen from the comfort of our home. Husband said he wanted to apologize to her before they got started. He said he was sorry for never being honest about their feelings for her, but before they got into that, they wanted to talk about boundaries. He expressed his disappointment in her smoking when they specifically asked her not to. When brother-in-law told her we had to forfeit the security deposit, her jaw dropped. She blamed the venue for not having any no smoking signs. Okay, so what about the part where you told her that smoking wasn't allowed? Why is it always everyone else's fault? Can we just get over this notion that we can't be wrong? I absolutely cannot stand it when you're in a disagreement with someone and they just can't be wrong. There is nothing wrong with being wrong. I'm never wrong. The way to get rid of a situation where you are in the wrong is to apologize and take accountability. We don't have to be perfect. No one's expecting anybody to be perfect. I'm expected to be perfect, but anyways, that's enough. When we don't take accountability, it just makes the situation that much worse. Husband and brother-in-law said they were never gonna let her try rewriting history again because they were too old to gaslight. Both brothers affirmed their truth. Mother-in-law said she believed them, but she swore they thought they meant cigarettes. When brother-in-law mentioned that the security deposit was a lot of money, mother-in-law said that she was sorry, but her smoking a little bit shouldn't have been a big deal. And she didn't see the harm since my dad paid for the wedding and he's loaded and he will never miss the money. Yet again, we are not taking accountability. Husband corrected her and told her we paid for much of the wedding costs, including the venue, so she actually cost us money. Mother-in-law asked if he was actually gonna make her pay us back. I mean, that's honestly kind of the least she can do at this point. You know what? I should. We expressed a clear boundary and you still broke it for your own selfish reasons. And you should be offering to pay me back with an apology. That would be a great way for you to start making amends. But we're not gonna put either one of us through asking you to do what's right. We're gonna give you the opportunity today to show us you do care about us and our feelings. Mother-in-law shrunk down in a desperate pile of tears, shocked to learn that her sons thought she didn't really care about them and asked how they could possibly think that because she loves them so much. I mean, when you literally don't care about people's feelings and you don't care about affirming their feelings, you kind of show that you care more about your own feelings and how people perceive you more than what you care about other people and their feelings. Husband later brought up the wedding incident and asked what she had to say about that now and what she would say to me if I was there. Mother-in-law resumed crying and said she felt like it was happening all over again, that she felt ganged up on and it was hard to sit and listen to. She said she thought they were coming to apologize for kicking her out of the wedding. Husband finally crossed the line of return. See, I told you I had hope. But at least now you know for sure. In a heightened situation where there's, people feel attacked and stuff like that, it takes a little bit of time for people to calm down. Not everybody's a narcissist. People do get defensive, okay? Being defensive isn't necessarily a sign of narcissism, but refusing to apologize and refusing to take accountability, playing the victim constantly, I ain't a doctor. I ain't gonna diagnose. But with people like that, there's literally no hope. Like, there really isn't. He said he wasn't surprised that she thought that. He admitted that what they were trying to say is that she's selfish and is hard to be around, so we always have to walk on eggshells around her. But they love her and they still want a relationship with her, and while they weren't asking for her to change, they were setting and asking her to respect their boundaries with no pushback when they enforce them. I think toddlers take rules better than my mother-in-law took those boundaries. She argued and yelled everywhere she could. She told them that moms don't need boundaries. I beg to differ. And she was appalled that they thought it was okay to treat her this way. She raised them better than this. Just because you have a child does not mean that they are indebted to you for the rest of their life, okay?
I brought you into this world to take you out of it.
Yes, you raised them, you probably did a lot for them, etc., but that doesn't mean that you're never wrong.
I am your mother!
It doesn't absolve you of having to take responsibility when you hurt people. She admitted she knew she wasn't the best mom when they were growing up, but she tried her best and loved them with all their heart, and that's all that matters. She told them they don't know how bad things got for her. When she would disappear, it was because she was protecting them. Brother-in-law said that they might believe that, but asked what excuse she had for the herb. Mother-in-law was horrified again at the accusation and fiercely denied any herb. She tried claiming it again, that their dad brainwashed them and he was the culprit, but husband showed her a scar left by one of her long nails, proving it was her. Mother-in-law said she disciplined them as any other mother would and never meant to hurt them. Husband just scars easily. She tried joking about how they were bad boys. Oh, Jesus. Husband and brother-in-law stared at her coldly and said it was more than discipline that they didn't deserve. She said they couldn't understand because they weren't parents yet. She said no parent is perfect, but all parents deserve to go to their kid's wedding, and they had no right to take that away from her. I mean, no, if you're acting like an absolute nutcase, no, you don't deserve to be at a wedding. I'm sorry, you don't. Mother-in-law demanded to know if husband had any regrets. He told her he did, and they watched her smile slowly turn into a scowl as he explained. He regrets never setting any boundaries with her. He regrets spending the last 10 years of their relationship pretending her behavior was okay. He regrets never being honest about his feelings with her. But if he had, maybe she would have second thoughts about trying to ruin their wedding. Mother-in-law cut him off and became shrill.
Ruin? You think I wanted to ruin your wedding? I was so happy to be there, you have no idea what I was planning on doing for you and me.
Husband calmly asked what she meant by that. Turns out, mother-in-law had more wedding surprises up her sleeves. She said she was planning on talking to the wedding coordinator about switching up the ceremony. She thought it was unfair how the wedding party always goes last before the bride. So instead, she wanted to walk down the aisle with husband right before my dad and I? Oh, she's Delulu for sure. She was even going to tell the coordinator to ask the guests to stand for their entrance so he would get as much attention as I would. Oh God, she's clearly delusional. Like, as much attention? Also, one of my bridesmaids had to drop out because her due date was the same week of my wedding. I didn't want to replace her, so there was one extra groomsman. No big deal. But mother-in-law knew this, so she said she was gonna stand in her place for her as my bridesmaid after just walking down the aisle with husband. Well, if her tirade didn't make you want to get rid of her, doing all of these things probably would have. Just out of curiosity, where in the lineup did you plan on standing? Brother-in-law asked. Right after her sister. That's where the bridesmaid would have been, right?
Oh, I'm just gonna make myself a bridesmaid. Oh, like you don't have a bridesmaid, so I'm just gonna be your bridesmaid.
No, bestie, no. It would have been a wonderful way for me to be a bigger part of your wedding. Not sure they want that. Then mother-in-law revealed she also had planned on sharing a speech after the mother-son dance. We never approved this and she never paid a cent for the wedding.
You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and read it to you boys. Maybe you'll actually regret the way you treat your mother.
Unlikely.
Her speech started with her introducing herself and making a joke about how she was glad to be finally at his wedding, so maybe people would stop mistaking her as her husband because she had him so young. Oh my God. She went on about the benefits and challenges of being a young mom. Okay, so making it about her. She talked about how she was forced to leave her ex-husband and leave her boys with him, and it was the hardest decision she ever had to make. She missed them at every moment they were gone, and every morning she woke up praying they were safe. Okay, this is not what a speech at a wedding is supposed to be like. You're supposed to talk about the bride and groom, for sakes. Do not make it about you. Mother-in-law said parents aren't always ready when they have kids, and she's humble enough to say she wasn't at first. But she thanks God for her boys every day because a mom is who she was meant to be, and she never would have found that or herself without them. Cool. She talked about how she went through more struggles than most, but she was proud to say she raised 2 of the best men that she knew. She ended her speech with how her boys were the light of her life, and she can't wait to see what life has in store for them next. Husband asked if she really planned on doing that without all his permission, and she said
It wouldn't have been a surprise if she told him.
he and his brother stood frozen, speechless. So mother-in-law said, "See? That's how much I care. I told you I wanted to be more involved in the wedding. That was my way of showing you and me how much I love you both, and you ruined it." Dear Lord. She confessed that no parent is perfect and she knew she wasn't, but she tries to do better and they can't see it because their dad painted her as the bad guy. Husband took her hand and sat her down on the couch. He softened his voice and told her he sees that and he knows she tries. He and brother-in-law thanked their mom for getting herself together from when they were little, but husband said that just because she's trying doesn't mean she doesn't still make mistakes. He carefully pointed out that even her rationalizing those would have been surprises was manipulative, and it was selfish of her to impose herself like that on our wedding, and said this is exactly why there's boundaries from here on out. Mother-in-law started yelling again, claiming they were the ones manipulating her.
Playing the victim. Look at me, I'm such a victim.
Treating her gestures of love like
Acts of the devil.
she said their dad and I were vilifying her. Maybe they would start to see her for who she really is, and they wouldn't need boundaries if they actually visited more. Husband asked if she has any regrets about what she said to me at the wedding and if she would apologize, but mother-in-law said she can't apologize for doing what she thought was right. You can apologize for upsetting people though, even if you think it was right. I failed to see how, everything she said to the bride was right. Husband and brother-in-law told her where we stand. Husband said he wasn't going to let her be around me at all until she proves she can respect boundaries without any pushback. Mother-in-law said those boundaries were harsh, and she thought it was disrespectful of her to have them at all. I mean, everything she's doing is disrespectful. Why is it that she's allowed to disrespect everybody, but when you tell her to stop disrespecting you, that's disrespectful? Make it make sense! It doesn't make sense! She asked what's gonna happen when we have kids, if I will let her babysit when she can't be around me. Okay, Mom, since you're making me say it, I've never felt comfortable with the thought of you alone with my kids. And honestly, after the wedding and now this, I don't feel comfortable with the thought of you even meeting them until and unless you prove you can respect boundaries. And these are my terms, not OPs. Mother-in-law yelled more, added in cursing, raving about how this isn't happening. And life hates her because she didn't get a chance to really be a mom and now she won't ever have a chance to be a grandma. She called them horrible and selfish and they have no right to say this or do any of this to her. Brother-in-law pointed out they're not even asking her to change. They just want her to respect their boundaries and they don't think it's a lot to ask. It's not. It really isn't. This is ridiculous.
It's preposterous.
Husband asked if there was anything she wanted to ask of us. She asked for the opposite of every boundary he and brother-in-law had just set for her. And more phone calls and visitation, of course. Oh, and she wanted a full apology from husband, brother-in-law, and myself. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. People that treat you always act like it's a privilege to have them in your life. And it's not. It's really not. You're kind of a hindrance, honestly. Isn't it crazy how you kicked her out of the wedding and as soon as you did that, you had an amazing day? Husband stated he had enough of this, and they gave her every opportunity to show she's truly caring about them, but she made it all about poor her at every turn. He told his mom it was ridiculous she couldn't compromise on the bare minimum for them. Husband said where they stood now was she had to accept their new boundaries, or they wouldn't be able to have a relationship with her. She said she didn't know them anymore, and all she sees now when she looks at them is their dad, and she doesn't want to know them anymore. They said they guessed that this was goodbye, and they're sorry that it came to this.
No, you aren't. If you were, you wouldn't be doing this. You'll regret this one day, and when that happens, I hope you remember that moms never close the door.
But I can slam it in your face, right? Knowing you'll never had regrets? No, I don't think I'll have any. I don't know how we'll be able to reach the door through the giant wall you put up, but we'll keep that in mind. Love you, Mom. They came home to the biggest hug from me and a home-cooked dinner. I think having that conversation healed a lot of the old wounds for them. Ooh, goody. That makes me happy. I will support the healing process just like they supported me when I needed them. Thank you all again for your suggestions and support. We heard you all and thank you for helping us get to this point. I hope you enjoyed the journey. See, the thing is it probably was very painful to have that conversation. But you know now, you know for sure, this wasn't just somebody who was being defensive, heat of the moment, whatever. This is someone who literally does not take accountability, ever, even when they hurt people. And unfortunately, being a person like that, you're doing it to yourself. People won't want to be around you, and unfortunately you'll have no one to blame but yourself. And going low contact or no contact is the only way they'll understand. I'm really glad that you guys said everything that you needed to say and that your husband and brother-in-law said everything they needed to say. This healed something in me. Thank you for sharing, Bugaboo 934.